Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. This is season 2, which is all about hiring. And before we get started, I would like to thank Prototype Prime for this podcasting space. I am joined here by my co-host, Annelle Barnett.
Hi.
How's it going today?
I'm doing well. How
Ready?
about you?
Doing well. Ready for another round?
I am. Let's do
Awesome.
this.
So today's topic is all about marketing job titles. What we want to do is leverage Annelle's experience in marketing recruiting, learn a little bit about job titles and you know, some of the impacts that they have and what these titles mean.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So the one I want to start off with in marketing is we see a lot of marketing positions that have the word manager in them because they are managing things and not people. So like a social media marketing manager, to me, you know, that would kind of say this person manages something and this title's higher than a social media marketing person. So what are you seeing in recruiting for specifically marketing resources where, you know, is there any confusion in these titles? Does everybody just kind of know what's going on because they're all marketing specific?
Sometimes there's confusion, but I do think that people realize that, you know, a manager is not always managing people. They're managing a task or managing a strategy or managing a segment of the business, the marketing business, I guess. So you can manage things and not necessarily manage people.
Gotcha. So like on the list we have here, we have social media marketing analyst, social media marketing coordinator, social media marketing manager. Now, to me, analyst is somebody who dives down into the metrics, right? They're really understanding a lot of nuance around that. But I'd love to get your opinion on like, what's the difference between an analyst, a coordinator, and a manager?
Honestly, it depends on the organization.
Okay.
So, you know, as you mentioned, an analyst, you would think is about the numbers, but in some cases, it's sometimes another word for a specialist or sometimes another word for an assistant or a coordinator. So it really, it does depend on the organization. So, which is kind of unfortunate because it's a lot of gray area. And frankly, that's kind of the thing about marketing is there are a lot of gray areas in marketing. It's not as simple as, say, accounting would be, where
they're a creative bunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yes, and we like to. I mean, we're the ones that come up with names and titles and company names and product names and things. So you know, why not come up with a bunch of job titles as well?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
Mix it up, change it by company and by department and all those fun things.
Yeah.
So when you're doing recruiting, you know, what steps are you taking to clarify these titles and what they really mean to that organization or that department or that marketing manager, you know, head of marketing, CMO, whatever it might be? Like, what do you have to do because they use them so interchangeably to really narrow it down and make sure that you're getting the right person with the right personality for that job?
Right. It's, you know, it very much depends on the size of the organization. So obviously in a larger company, a director is going to be probably at the same level as a VP in a smaller company. So you really just have to kind of figure out the organization, how big it is, what their hierarchy structure is. Some organizations are flatter than others. So there aren't, you know, different tiers of people. It's, you know, head of marketing or CMO or director. You know, sometimes a VP and a director are the same position. They just have different titles because of the size of the organization or just even because of how an organization has grown. For instance, a startup may have a CMO
of 3.
Right.
right.
Or even them just themselves.
Right.
So they may be the CMO of the organization because they are in that organization a chief marketing officer. But it'll be very difficult for that individual to get a CMO position in a larger organization because it's not the same. So as far as an employer is concerned, the more that you can actually normalize the titles, the better off you'll be, so that you don't have people that have titles that are bigger than what their role actually is.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know when I had my last company, we got up to a few million in revenue, and I always just was like, CEO sounds good, but
Right.
I didn't find that to be what I really wanted to go by. I know this round my business card says founder,
Right.
and I like that a lot more. It just it represents me and the business and other things like that. As far as the roles and jobs, I mean, we've seen that people do it, there's kind of two camps, and I guess there's a lot in the middle, but the two camps we've seen a lot of is, basically make up your title. You can do it, there's a certain level of freedom, and people just kind of pick what is good for them. And, these are in smaller organizations, and there's a lot of freedom around the title. And then there's other places, like I've read a lot, I think it was on, Facebook structure, where like every title is earned.
Right.
It actually means something. It comes with a pay band. It's very specific. So what other styles are you seeing out in the world?
I don't really have anything to add as far as styles are concerned, but I think it is very important for an employer to establish some guidelines around that. Like you said, making up your own title is not it's not gonna go well for for the future. So be forward thinking in what people call themselves. It's a lot easier to turn a coordinator into a manager, or a manager into a director, than it is for a CMO being, 5 years in with the company to all of a sudden being
get replaced by the CMO because of growth or something.
Right. Get replaced by an actual CMO.
Right.
Or they get, their title gets demoted because, they're currently at the top of the title structure, but not the top of the actual role structure. And then they become a marketing manager when they had been a CMO in the past. That's actually a disservice to your employees. It's seemingly cool to, be early on in your career and to be a CMO, but when you're trying to find your next job, it's actually not gonna help you because it's just not communicating what your position was effectively.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to go from, a CMO of a 100-person company to, 5,000 person company. It's probably not going to work out quite the same.
Right. And when they see CMO on the job title, as your job title on your resume, and you're applying for a director level position in a larger company, they're going to, pass over you pretty quickly because they're going to think you're way overqualified for the position for which you're applying. So it really is important for the employer and for the employee to have the appropriate job title.
Yeah, I know we made the mistake before of giving people a little bit of leeway on the loftier job titles as a small business.
Right.
For certain appearance sake and other different things like that, or their ego or whatever it might be. And it seems like people, they overcommit to those emotionally in a lot of ways.
They do.
And then when you have to pull back or, do something else, or they're interim, you let them be a manager of something but they're really the team lead.
Right.
And there's a very big difference between team lead and a manager for me, at least mentally. And so when you go hire a manager and they have to report to somebody else, all of a sudden there's a lot of conflict there.
Right. And you never want your employees to feel like they're going backwards instead of forwards. So
right.
It's as I mentioned, it's much easier to increase someone's title or promote their title than it is to take it away from them.
Yeah. Are you seeing anything else out there that, is causing recruiters a little bit of a challenge in the titles and how they're picked, or maybe the flat architecture of the flat hierarchy versus, your more traditional job tree?
Right. Well, I think there's, for instance, a communications manager or someone with a communications title is, if you're in communications, if that's the job that you do, then you understand what a communications person does. There's either an internal communications person or an external communications person. Internal is communicating, across the organization.
Like about company culture.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And then you have external communication, which is, working with the media and public relations and things like that. Well, the average person that's not in communications doesn't realize what that person does. So I've gotten resumes, for communications roles where someone was a call center operator. And so they're communicating all day long.
Right.
But
not in the way that we need.
Right. So in their eyes and in their view of their skills, they're perfectly qualified for this position, but it's not what the position is. So it's more, around that and people not fully understanding what a job is and applying based on what the word means rather than what the position means.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of nuance on job titles in marketing and, of course, every other department and industry that you really have to dig into. Because I know when I started Epic Culture, I said, we're going to build a marketing machine. Like, we want lots of content. We want lots of education. We want to be the leaders in the space. And, I had to start looking up marketing job titles.
Right.
What does this title mean versus this if I'm going out and hiring somebody? Mm-hmm. And I like to, as I mentioned in our previous podcast, I like to be very specific and find people that are really good at something as opposed to generalist on most accounts. And when you want somebody who's really good and you have to narrow down the title, then you also have to make decisions around, what you're going to forego. Right. Because a generalist is like, I just have a lot of marketing stuff to do. Like, I need to hire a marketing person. And, then the results don't come out the way that you need. And you realize, well, I need this person that does something very specific. And I need maybe 3 of those.
Yeah.
Going back to the gig economy,
right.
I need 4 of those people for 10 hours instead of 1 of those people for 40 hours.
Right. And I think a lot of business owners don't really, to your point, they don't really know enough about marketing to understand what those differences are. So they're looking for a marketing generalist
person
who's able to do everything, and then that's when the purple unicorn comes into play. They want their marketing person to be able to do search engine optimization and search engine marketing and social media and content development and video work and website work. And it's just that person doesn't exist.
And I would like them for $50K a year.
Exactly. Oh, yes.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
If you find them, let me know. Send them over.
Yeah.
Send them over.
I mean, they actually do exist at some level, like some people can do all of those things, but they can only do each of those things to a certain
70%
degree.
or something. Right.
So I'm actually a marketing generalist. That's what my background was, which turned out to be great once I got to the director and VP level, because I did know a little bit about everything and I could pull in the right resources for those different things. But, earlier on in your career, it's, I guess hiring someone that is specialized is often maybe a better strategy than hiring somebody that's generalized, unless you have the budget to support the generalized person to bring in the resources they need for the different activities and the different functions of marketing.
So are you generally finding that a successful marketing generalist, somebody that knows a lot across of many things, are generally going to be like, I like saying generally, of course, and general marketing generalist here. It's come a few times. That somebody in that space is really set up well to become a manager or director or VP, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Because they're the ones that know a little bit about everything and can pull the resources in when they need them. And in fact, really in a very small organization or a startup, a marketing generalist will probably be a good solution, because going back to our gig economy podcast that we did, they can pull in resources as they need them. So their role is to manage all the different parts of the marketing function. So bringing in resources to do the videos and bringing in resources to do the content, and then pulling all those things together is a good strategy for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know we were doing some kind of just research and brainstorming on different models with remote employees. And one of the concepts we had come up with in the brainstorming was all of your management and leadership is local, right? They have to be in the same headquarters. We're not taking anybody that flies in and flies out or is in another location. And the goal of that team is to set the direction and the strategy, and then they can manage any resource from there. So they can manage local resources, remote, in-state resources, or in-country resources, remote out-of-country resources.
Right.
But, the efficiency of the management team and communication is happening in one place. So that was a fun thought experiment just to see, like, what does that look like versus, oh, well, one manager's here and one's there, but other people are here, and you got this really, there's no strategy to where people are and where they reside and why.
Right. I think that's a good way to operate business for sure. So marketing is an interesting beast in itself. There are hundreds of different disciplines. There are 8,000 different marketing technology platforms. So having someone that is an expert in all of those different areas is frankly impossible. And it makes it a challenge for hiring managers, for internal recruiters, for external recruiters like me to understand the differences between these positions and the differences between the disciplines. And it's hard specifically for an internal recruiter that has never worked in marketing before to actually understand what these roles are and overlapping characteristics of individuals that would make them a really good candidate for a position, whereas they may not recognize those different crossover skills that somebody that has actually done marketing would.
Yeah, I could definitely see how, if you're an internal recruiter, you have no marketing experience or experience in other areas. Like it could probably be pretty confusing to do what I would call like technology synonym matching. Like we need somebody that's an expert in Pardot, but that also is synonymous with marketing automation, HubSpot, Eloqua, and that's just marketing automation, right? There's 8,000 pieces of software out there. So like if you don't specialize in recruiting in that area, then when you're reviewing a resume, you may think somebody doesn't have experience because, just the sheer number of technology synonyms out there, you don't make the connection.
Right. Yeah. And I advise people with candidates in their resumes to actually include specific keywords from the job descriptions, for instance, a Pardot or a Marketo. And the words need to be written the same way that the words are in the job description, because the internal recruiter often, as we've just discussed, doesn't understand the difference between Marketo and Pardot, and they don't know that those two things are synonymous. So if you're very specific in your resume to match what's in the job description, then those two things align, and the internal recruiter will realize that you actually have that skill. Right. Now, I don't condone or advise anyone to put anything in their resume that is not true, but this goes for the things that are true. It really does, an internal recruiter is aligning the actual bullet points with your resume, and they're checking boxes to make sure that you have the different things that are required for the job description. And so your resume actually needs to communicate it in the same way that the job description does.
Yeah, so you could almost put like multiple years of marketing automation experience using Pardot.
Right.
Parentheses similar to, these other systems or whatever it might be.
Right.
Gotcha. Because you'd be telling the truth, but you're helping lead them down the path.
Yes, for sure. And then, marketing automation is a great example. Everyone has a different definition of that. Everyone that doesn't know what it is has a different definition of it. So it's very much a filter question for me when I conduct interviews. I ask if they've used any marketing automation platforms, and if they say yes, then I ask them which ones. And
Constant Contact.
Right. Or MailChimp. And MailChimp has some automation, so I can see.
Yeah, they've pivoted a bit over the few years. Yeah.
So that's a little bit, I give a little bit of leeway on that one. But it's very clear to me if they know what marketing automation is by asking which platforms they know or which ones they're familiar with. I can find out very quickly if they're stretching the truth.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we hope that you have enjoyed our share all about marketing titles and how they are nuanced across various organizations. So get clear about your marketing titles, how you use them, and what you're looking for in your marketing roles. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.